What was that all about?
The Big Bang of the cosmos began with a backbeat. And two brothers from Istanbul, Ahmet and Neswi Ertegun, are responsible for more classic vinyl than Elvis and the Beatles put together. Ahmet founded Atlantic Records in 1947. Warner Communications bought Atlantic 20 years later, and the Erteguns went to work for Steve Ross.
Here we were, two New York businessmen who had this love of soccer. My brother decided to leave Atlantic Records. And Steve Ross said, if you stay, I'll do anything that you'd like. So my brother said to Steve Ross, said, listen, what I really would like is a professional soccer football team.
Neswi Ertegun came to me and Steve, actually, and said, you know, soccer is going to be the biggest sport. It is the biggest sport in the world, and clearly it's going to overtake America.
Television viewers in the U.S. had gotten their first taste of world football's potential in 1966. They saw almost 100,000 fans pack Wembley Stadium for the final between England and West Germany, as the BBC broadcast was carried live in America. In one of the most thrilling matches ever played, a young Franz Beckenbauer and his teammates could not stop England's Geoff Hurst.
It's a goal! Some people are on the pitch, they think it's all over. It is now. It's
In the UK alone, more than 32 million viewers tuned into the extra time thriller, still the biggest audience in BBC history.
You can't have a professional league without having investors convinced, and I think the showing of the World Cup in 1966 was the turning point. That convinced them that it could happen in this country.
The American game of the same name was flourishing, with the birth of the Super Bowl and the first network television contracts.
The American Football League franchises had become, over the years, sometimes quite quickly, worth millions and millions of dollars. And soccer, the franchises were very cheap. So you had the opportunity, the possibility of getting in on something on the ground floor.
Emboldened by the BBC's success in '66, American investors backed not one, but two professional American soccer leagues.
Trying to find an American who could play soccer, American-born who could play soccer, it just wasn't there.
By 1968, the two leagues had collapsed into one, the North American Soccer League, featuring 5 largely failing franchises.
We knew that if the league was going to be a success, if we're going to get the media and sponsorship and television attention, that we had to have a successful New York franchise.
The stars would align for the NASL just south of the border in Mexico City at the 1970 World Cup.
Neswi and I gave a big party at the World Cup. We invited Pelé, and all of them came to our party.
I just happened to gate crash into a party, and a gentleman there introduced himself. He said, "Come on in. My name is Neswi Ertegun." So right then, that night, I met his brother as well, Ahmet, and we arranged to meet in New York later.
Neswi and Ahmet returned to Manhattan and held Steve Ross to his promise.
Steve and I called 8 other executives and got them to put in $35,000 each. I did it, Steve did it.
So, I mean, what's $1 million between friends?
They hired Clive Toye as general manager before most of them had ever seen a game.
Neswi said, I'm going to take you to St. Louis, the hotbed of soccer. I mean, this is where soccer is really big. We got there, and 340 people were in the stands. I counted them, 340 people. We watched the game, and it was, you know, I never knew what a header was. I thought giving great head was something else. And I looked at Steve. I said, we love Neswi, we love Ahmet, but this is going to be a disaster.
The league was nothing to talk about. I mean, it was really semi-professional. And we had a ragtag team.
They started recruiting players. All they needed was a name.
The previous New York professional club had been the Mets, New York Mets, and Mets is short for Metropolitan. So I thought, well, what's bigger than Metropolitan? And came up with Cosmopolitan, and suddenly it clicked, Cosmos. That's how the Cosmos became the Cosmos.
Toy's first hire was an English player-coach named Gordon Bradley.
Clive and I, he was in the office, and he was doing his planning and his playing. I was out in the field, coaching.
My name is Gordon Bradley, and I'm a professional soccer player. A lot of you will probably not have heard of this game or seen this game played before, but I think it's just about the greatest game in the world.
In the early years, Bradley and Toy built the team with players mainly from New York's amateur leagues.
The league was called the North American Soccer League, a professional league. But in essence, it was a semi-pro league.
We didn't make a whole lot of money. We practiced twice a week. We all worked for a living. I worked for an architectural firm.
I was working as a teacher at a high school in an all-black neighborhood and then playing for the Cosmos on the side. I'll never forget the first contract I signed. You know, I was so proud. I thought I needed an agent. How do I negotiate? And then the coach at the time, Gordon Bradley, said, I'll offer you $2,100 for the season. I said, well, what would you say if I said no? He said, I couldn't care less. So I said, okay, yeah, I'll sign.
I worked at Warner Brothers Jungle Habitat, which was it was a safari up in West Milford, New Jersey.
Randy Horton was the Cosmos' first leading scorer. A chimp named Harold from his day job was the team's first mascot. Horton's boss at the Wild Animal Park, an architect from Havana, Cuba, named Rafael de la Sierra, became the Cosmos' first vice president.
I remember a friend of mine asking me if I knew how many people play on his side, and I have no idea. You know, it was 10 or 9 or, I don't know, but there were a bunch of guys, you know. I mean, it was really a disgrace of a team in many ways.
When we started with the Cosmos, it was a small ethnic crowd. Nobody knew who we were, and we just played because we loved the game. We loved the game of soccer.
They played their first game at Yankee Stadium, but soon moved 25 miles east of the city to Hofstra University on Long Island.
There were maybe 50 people in the stands, and it was mostly the family of the players. We were thinking of, you know, how can we possibly draw anything to see this game, you know?
We'd give away T-shirts, balls, keychains, and they would have me call radio stations of 2 listeners. And I felt like Jimmy Swaggart or Billy Graham at the time, you know, to spread the word.
Listen to me, legislator.
It was almost an impossible situation, you know? We tried everything, and it didn't really work.
In 1972, the Cosmos won the league championship. Not that anyone noticed. But by then, the ragtag team had hooked the only fan that mattered.
We're sitting out in the stands in the pouring rain with, 50 to 100 people watching the game. My father's running down on the sidelines giving the players towels to wash off. This is, that's who he was. He did anything he did like with a great deal of gusto.
It was all of the dreams that he had of owning a major league sports team, and tried to believe that this was a major league sports team when indeed it wasn't. I went to Steve and I said, Steve, clearly this is something that Warner should take, not us, because this is going to lose quite a bit of money.
The 10 original investors sold their stake in the Cosmos to Warner Communications for $1. Ross put his empire behind the idea of American soccer.
When it first was released that Warner Communications was buying the soccer team, I don't think anybody really took it seriously.
Sports editors treated soccer as if it was a leper colony.
They wouldn't give us the time of day in the early days, so I used to buy them subscriptions to soccer magazines so they knew how to spell the word soccer.